Or are there other things that are more important than money? And I think that we need elders to get up and tell the youth, and the youth provide the muscle, and it's their future that's at stake.
So is it too late?
You can't say it's too late.
With 5% chance, like and again, I don't see myself as an industrialist, but I certainly see myself as an entrepreneur. But when I hear 5% chance, I hear hope. I hear even if there's 1%, half a percent chance, I hear hope.
That's all we're left with is hope. So when I hear people that are saying it's too late, as Guy McPherson, this guy, people are saying we've passed too many critical tipping points to go back. I say, look, your message of urgency, that's the message to get out. Because even if it is too late, we're not going to stop. You're just going to say, oh, wow, what the hell? The planet's going to hell. No, of course not. You can't. So shut the hell up. Don't say it's too late. And I say, we don't know enough to say it's too late.
Yeah.
You've got to have hope. Now, the hope I cling to is not based on some Pollyanna-ish idea, oh, well, don't worry, things. No, it's based on reality. The most prized species of salmon in the world is called the sockeye salmon. And this is a species, the flesh is bright red and oily. It's a great fish, right? The biggest run of sockeye in the world is in the Fraser River here in British Columbia. And we like to get 20 to 30 million sockeye coming back in their run. In 2009, we got just over 1 million sockeye coming back. And I vividly remember turning to my wife and I said, that's it, they've had it. There isn't enough biomass to get them up to the spawning beds. I said, the sockeye are gone. 1 year later, we got the biggest run of sockeye in 100 years. So I say this not to show how stupid I am.
No.
We've got a royal commission trying to find out what the hell's going on. But nature shocked us. And I believe that nature has many, many more surprises. Some of them not so great. But I think she will be far more generous than we deserve. We've got to pull back. We've got to protect every bit of nature we've got left and work like hell to cut our ecological footprint and try to restore nature. We've got to regreen the planet. This is the opportunity we have, but it's a very narrow window. But you always have to have hope because we've got our children and grandchildren whose future is at stake.
And this is impacting me quite significantly. I've got a three and a half year old.
Well, there it is.
You know, this is certainly hitting home.
I said to Tim Flannery, Tim Flannery, I said, he just got remarried and had a kid, and I'm going, oh my God, you know what you've got.
Is there any room for technology
yes, of course,
to be able to, essentially help us combat some of these effects?
There is enormous opportunity. There is enormous opportunity. We need things, not just alternatives to the current energy problem. We're going to need technology to begin to reduce the carbon and methane in the atmosphere.
Is that a conversation that we should be pointing industrialists towards? Because if people are driven by economics, and if we can't change that perspective, radically and quickly, should we be looking for ways to be able to ignite the conversation around the economics of technology that could perhaps...
The only problem is that we always have to be aware that we don't know enough to anticipate the negative consequences of technology. That's what Rachel Carson did with pesticides. How can we be careful if we didn't even know there was a thing called biomagnification up the food chain? We didn't know about that. When atomic bombs were dropped on Japan, we didn't know there was radioactive fallout. That was discovered years later. When CFCs were first used in huge quantities, we didn't know in the upper atmosphere chlorine would be broken off and scavenge ozone. So over and over again, our knowledge is too limited to anticipate all of the consequences. And yet we're jumping into nanotechnology, into artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and now people are saying, whoa, we've got climate is running away. Geoengineering. We've already screwed up the planet, and we want to have more technology by taking over the whole atmosphere and engineering it to keep it from heating up too much. This is madness. This is absolute madness. I say that we need new technology, but it's got to be technology done with great humility and care. And I believe the guiding principle of technology has got to be what's called biomimicry. Rather than overwhelming nature with how smart we are, we've got to look to nature and say, gee, nature, you've dealt with many of the same problems we have. How do you find a mate? How do you reproduce? Where do you find food? What do you do when you get sick? What happens with parasites? These are, every species has had even bacteria get viral infections. And we all develop solutions to that. Well, maybe we should follow how nature does things to avoid getting into these big difficulties. So, I always say...
Well, is this the world's way of, essentially getting rid of bacteria? Like if we look at the world, Gaia, as an organism, as its own organism in itself with, numerous multiple interwoven complex parts, it's starting to heat up. It's as if, the planet is having
It's got a fever.
And when we have a temperature, our body heats to a level that in many cases will kill off bacteria.
That's right.
So is what we're experiencing perhaps not necessarily annihilation of the Earth? Oh, I think that's what you actually said in the first part of our conversation. Is what we're experiencing not necessarily the annihilation of Earth, but the potential annihilation of mankind, so Earth can rehabilitate?
Yes. I mean, I don't think that there's any conscious consequence of what's going on. It's just the way that Gaia works is all of these systems are operating, and when something changes, an ice age or whatever, there are compensatory mechanisms. Life carries on. The extinction is natural. 99.9999% of all species that have ever existed are extinct. So the Earth is not going to be annihilated. The Earth is going to do fine. Got along fine without us. It's not... The biosphere is kind of being disturbed by us, but long after we're gone, the Earth will still be here, and whatever is here will be here. Do
you think maybe that's what's required, like an event that wipes out a huge portion of populations in order for the Earth to rebuild and for us to do it again, but perhaps in a more intelligent...
Well, no, if there's that kind of catastrophic event, we're not going to be around. We're at the apex. We're at the top. When you have an extinction crisis, all the apex, the top species, they're the most vulnerable. We're gone. It'll be insects, fungi, bacteria. I mean, and I have no doubt that life will again flourish. But if we look at the past 5 episodes of major extinction, where 80, 90% of species disappear, it takes 10 to 20 million years before you build up again in terms of diversity and so on. So we've changed. We are the major force changing the chemical, physical, and biological properties of the planet. The biosphere is going to take many millions of years to recover in terms of the diversity and all that. But I have grandchildren, so although I see that extinction is normal and we're driving towards our own extinction, pisses me off that we still have an opportunity to do something for our grandchildren. That's what drives me. And if scientists say we have a 5% chance, that's what I'm going for. And for me and the foundation, I'm saying Canada signed a treaty. Australia signed a treaty in Paris. Now, damn well, live up to it. That's my whole pressure. If you mean what you did, then goddamn well live up to it. That means leave the coal in the ground. That means harnessing the sun's energy and exploiting that. That means getting off in a radically different way and re-greening the planet. If you look, whenever I fly over a forest, I'm just struck. You look down, everything is going like this. Give it to me, right? Now you fly over a city. All you see are the flat surfaces of huge buildings, concrete sidewalks, asphalt roads. Those are all potential sunlight receivers. Now, France is building a 1,000-kilometer highway that's a complete solar panel. That solar panel will feed hundreds of thousands of homes with energy. In Freiburg in Germany, they've got a whole subdivision where each house actually makes money by putting energy back onto the grid. They put more energy on than they receive. And so they actually make money by making green energy. This is a kind of thing that we've got to start doing. And there is entrepreneurial opportunity. But entrepreneurialism has got to be driven with the understanding that must not come at the expense of the things that matter. So this is a very long interview. I know I want to tell you one more story because it's a very important one. We've been fighting the Alberta tar sands now for many years, and we believe it has to be stopped and shut down. So 4 years ago, I get a phone call, and it's the CEO of one of the largest oil companies in the tar sands. Can I come and talk to you? I said, of course. I said, I'm not into fighting. I stopped fighting a long time ago, because in any fight, you have a winner and a loser. We can't afford losers. We've all got to be working together. So come on down. He came down the next morning, came to the door here, and I thanked him and all that. And I said, I want you to do me one favor before you come into my office. I want you to leave your identity as a CEO outside the door. I want to meet you, one human being to another. Because I said, the important thing, I think, is we both have to agree on what it is to be human and how we have to provide the fundamental needs. Then we can talk about your company or whatever. But I want to find out, where do we agree? Now, this blew him away, because that's not why he came down. But to his credit, I could tell from his body language, he did not want to do this. But he came in and sat down. I said, look, I'm sorry, I know this isn't why you came, but this is what I'm thinking. I said, we live in a world that is shaped and constrained by laws of nature. And there's nothing you can do about it. You have to live within it. I said, physics tells you that you can't build a rocket that will travel faster than the speed of light. You know that. That the law of gravity says if I trip on this rock, I'm going to hit my head on the ground. That's gravity. And the first and second law of thermodynamics tells you you can't build a perpetual motion machine. Those are all laws of physics, and it's crazy to try to beat them. So chemistry, the atomic property of the elements, determines the melting point, the freezing point, the reaction rates and diffusion constants. That's all determined by the properties of the atoms, of the elements. And chemists can tell you what we can or cannot make and attest to. We live with that. And biology, it's the same. Every species has a maximum number that can be achieved, and that's dictated by what's called the carrying capacity of an ecosystem or habitat. Exceed that number and your population will crash. Well, we're not confined to ecosystems because we're smart, we adapt, but we live within the biosphere, and there is only a certain maximum number that can be sustained, and we're long past that. The carrying capacity is determined by both the number of humans there are and the amount per person that we use. And we're way over the ability of the planet to sustain us, and we do that by using up our children's legacy. So, and biology dictates that we are animals. I never realized how controversial that is. I gave a talk in Austin, Texas in the 1990s to the first annual meeting of the Green Builders. And there were 3,000 people, a lot of kids. And I said, now kids, if you remember one thing from my speech, remember we are animals. My God, did the parents get pissed off at me? This woman came up, she was mad. Don't call my daughter an animal, we're human beings. And I said, madam, I'm really sorry, but if your daughter isn't an animal, is she a plant? Because we're one or the other. And as an animal, I said, Mr. CEO, what is the most important thing that we need? And instead, any child would tell you, but he's going, well, and I knew right away he's thinking jobs, money. I said, look, if you don't have air for 3 minutes, you're dead. If you have to breathe polluted air, you're sick. So, Mr. CEO, would you agree with me? Clean air should be regarded as sacred. It's something that we all should have a responsibility to protect. And then I said, you and I, we're 60 to 70% water. We're just basically a blob of water with enough organic thickener added. We don't dribble away on the floor, but our bodies leak water, right? Skin and our eyes and our crotch, and we lose water. I said, Mr. CEO, if you don't have water for 4 to 6 days, you're dead. If you have to drink contaminated water, you're sick. So clean water should be sacred. And we have a responsibility to protect that. And then with food, we can last 4 to 6 weeks, but eventually we die. Every bit of the food we eat was once alive, plants and animals, and most of it grows in the soil. So would you agree that clean food and soil is up there with clean water and clean air? And then I said, all of the energy in our bodies that we need to grow and move and reproduce, all of the energy in wood and dung and peat, oil, coal and gas, all of that is sunlight. Sunlight captured by plants in photosynthesis, converted into chemical energy. We get it by eating plants or animals that eat the plants. We store it. When we need to move or work or reproduce or grow, we burn those molecules and liberate the energy of the sun back out in our bodies. So photosynthesis joins clean soil, clean air, and clean water. And then I said, the miracle to me of life on Earth is those four things that indigenous people call earth, air, fire, and water. Those four sacred elements are cleansed, replenished, created by life. It's all of the plants that are capturing sunlight and letting us store it. It's all the plants taking carbon out of the air, putting oxygen back in it. Before there were plants, there was no oxygen in the atmosphere. Plants create the oxygen. It's soil, fungi, and bacteria that filter the water when it falls on land. In Vancouver, you're drinking water out of 3 watersheds surrounded by old-growth rainforest. And all the plant roots and the soil, fungi, and bacteria filter. We don't have to do anything. And I know people say, well, the fish shit in the water. Well, guess what? It's all cleaned by nature. You know, we drink that water. Nature creates soil. You know, the movie The Martian, where Matt Damon is stranded. There's lots of sand and clay and gravel, but there's no soil, because soil is created by life. So he has to put poop in every hole to put the potatoes in to grow them. So life creates the very things that we need to survive. And our responsibility should be to protect those things, because they're the foundation of the way we live. Other things, borders we draw around properties, cities, and they don't mean anything in the natural world, right? Nature couldn't care less. And then we have things we call capitalism, the economy, the market, corporations. We act like these are forces of nature, but we invented them, for Christ's sake. It's like believing in dragons or demons. Who believes in... 300 years ago, people believed dragons were real. We don't anymore. Well, then why have we replaced them with the economy or the market? The market, free the market, let the market... This is a human-created thing. We can't change nature, but we can change the things that we create. That's the challenge for the entrepreneurs. How do we create an economy that nourishes the things that keep us healthy and alive? The air, the water, the soil. That's a challenge for your entrepreneurs. How can we make a living through the economy while performing a sacred obligation? And I said to this CEO, I said, Mr. CEO, I know this is difficult, but if you will shake hands with me and agree, that's the foundation of the way we live, I will do everything I can to help you and your company. What do you think he did? He couldn't shake hands. He was a good man. This is what I'm always told, you know, he's a good man. He goes to church every Sunday. He loves camping with his kids. But the game he's playing in, your game, it's rigged. It's rigged to ignore the most precious things that we have. If he were to go back to his shareholders and say, look, I had a discussion with Suzuki and I have to agree, whatever our company does, we can't mess with the air, the water, the soil. He'd get fired in a picosecond, because that's not his job. His job is to make money. The more and the faster, the better. And to say we've got to protect the air, the water, the soil, those are not in the game. So we've got to change the rules of the game if we want to keep playing. And that's a big challenge.
I can see that. And if there was 3, and again, I want to get back to some practicality of what we can do. You know, as entrepreneurs, you've made a really strong case, one that I'll be championing. But as, you know, not everyone listening to this is going to be necessarily an entrepreneur in business. But if there's 3 things at a practical level, at a household level, that everyone could do immediately in order to affect some change. I know the first one you mentioned was, you know, use your voice, vote.
Yes.
You know,
that is right now, with a very short window of opportunity, everybody has got to be active in the political process at every level, municipal, provincial.
You're basically calling for a revolution. We need a revolution.
Well, no, I'm just saying let's have responsible democracy where everybody, like the Australians, where everybody votes.
Is there such a thing as responsible democracy? Because
democracy
seems to be it's a bit laughable at the moment when you look at what's going on.
Well, you know, we worked with the Chinese government for 3 years. There is an area in Tibet, a big area the size of Italy, that is the source of 4 of the great rivers, the Salween, the Brahmaputra, the Yangtze. There are 4 great rivers coming out of this area, and they're logging the hell out of it. So we worked for 3 years going to meet with officials and drinking and negotiating, and then after they trusted us, we were saying there are alternatives to logging. They understood that logging in the upper waters caused floods and all kinds of shit downstream. So we convinced them that we had economic alternatives. They said, okay, we agree. Overnight, the logging stopped.
Wow.
That's what you can do when you don't have a democracy.
Yeah, right.
But
Wow.
I prefer a democracy. I'm sorry.
No,
And
I understand.
I really believe that. But it's only as good as how much people are going to be involved in it. And right now, we're not.
So step one, we need to use voice. Yeah. We need to vote. We need to vote with and it's not necessarily, and again, this is a huge mind shift. We're not voting necessarily with the planet in mind. We're voting with humanity in mind.
Absolutely.
What's the second thing we can do?
Well, of course, we have to live in a very different way.
Yeah.
And that is, I think that one of the major issue we have to confront in the developed world, in the industrialized world, is we are the hyper consumers on the planet. If every country in the world wanted to live the way we do in Canada and Australia, we're hooped many times over. We are the I know population's a big issue in Australia. You're already way overpopulated. Why? Because of your hyperconsumption. There is no way that Australia can support, what do you have, 18 million?
23.
23 million. Yeah. There's no way that 23 million could live within the boundaries of Australia. You can't. You depend on the global economy. So the reach of Australia is you can live very high in your big cities because you're using the whole world to get your goods and sell your stuff and all that. We've got to be much more locally based. We've got to eat local. We preferably buy local. But the big challenge is, for Christ's sake, think hard about whenever you spend money. If you go out to buy a cotton shirt, very few people know that cotton is probably the most chemically intensive crop we grow. And if you look at areas like in Eurasia, where they've got the biggest cotton growing area, and look at the impact that that's had on the rivers and lakes, on the people, it's been absolutely catastrophic. We just think, I want a cotton shirt, and I put my money down, I want a logo on it, and off we go. But just buying that cotton shirt has reverberations that ripple out. And we've got to be much more thoughtful about the way that when you buy a car, there's a lot of metals there. Mining, again, is one of the most destructive things that we do. And we've got to ask, where are the metals coming from? What is the impact of mining in their ecosystems on the people? We've got to be much more thoughtful of everything that we use. That's a really big ask.
That's great. So 2 is consumption. Yeah. Look at what we're consuming. Yeah. Become minimalist in our consumption.
And then I think it's working very, very hard to create community. I believe the unit of survival into the future is going to be the community. The community is going to be what shares, support each other, and we're going to find ways of our entertainment, our joy. Everything is going to come from our local area. So put money into building your local community.
All right. David Suzuki, Dr. David Suzuki, you are a super humanitarian. I know that word does make you uncomfortable, but if there's one thought that you'd like to leave the listeners and the viewers with as we finish the interview, what would it be?
Well, to be thoughtful. Most of your viewers will be parents or prospective parents or grandparents. And to me, the greatest thing that ever happened to me in my life was when I had my first child. And being a father has been the most rewarding, wonderful thing I've done. And I thought that was it until I had grandchildren. And that is 10 times better because I don't have to spend 24 hours a day.
You can give them back.
Yeah. But that has just driven me with a really powerful sense of passion and concern, because they are by far the most important things on the planet to me.
Well, that's interesting, which leads to a question which you may have already answered, but what is Dr. David Suzuki's purpose? What is it that drives you?
Well, it's exactly that.
Yeah.
I'm at a stage, as I say, when I realized that even my testosterone levels were dropping, oh my God, I thought that's what life was all about. And what I found was that I keep telling my wife, I'm getting smarter. I don't have to think about sex every 5 minutes. Holy cow, I'm going to catch up to you soon, you know, like, but I mean, being an elder has put a lot of things into perspective. And I can tell you, money and all of the stuff, you know, I see rich people building these gigantic homes and buying very expensive fancy cars and even planes. Believe me, at the end of your life, that's not what you're going to feel proudest of, or that you contributed to. It's not going to be stuff or money. It's going to be your children and grandchildren. So think about them, please.
Dr. David Suzuki, thank you so much for your time.
There you have it, guys. Thanks for tuning in to Unstoppable with me, your host, Kerwin Ray. And do me a favor, don't forget to drop me a review on iTunes. Would love to hear what you think. I love reading what you guys have to say. And your reviews make sure we keep creating killer content just like this. If you want to stay up to date with me and all my movements, please jump onto the website, kerwinray.com. And also check us out on social media at Kerwin Ray.